These video cassettes are a gift from the Garrett Corporation.
This program has been made possible by grants from Chemical Bank. Fluor, a worldwide engineering, construction, and natural resource corporation. And by the Ford Motor Company, where quality is job one.
بالإسراع في تنفيذ مشروع الطريق المزدوج الذي يربط بين الدول.
This is Abu Dhabi, a city that shimmers like gold in the sun. It is, in fact, one of the most expensive in the world. 20 years ago, it barely existed. It is part of the Petrodollar coast, the mysterious, spectacular world created by a sea of oil wealth along the Arabian-Persian Gulf. And this to the south is Muscat in the land of Oman, another city of the Gulf. But this one as ancient as the trade route that brought it wealth and made it the envy and the battleground for the kings and merchants of Europe. One day, many years ago, it literally closed its doors to the outside world and became a place on Earth where life was lived almost totally unchanged from centuries before, until now. Both of these cities, both of these countries, are part of the fascinating mix of people and places that line the Gulf today. The oil kingdoms, countries that have experienced one of the fastest and greatest transfers of wealth the world has ever known. I'm Jo Franklin-Trout, and tonight we're going to take you inside this fabled part of the world that few will ever see, for a look that many may find surprising at what life has been and what it has become, the bonanza and the problems that oil wealth has brought. Tonight, the oil kingdoms, two quite different neighbors who tell the story of the Petrodollar coast. Oman is a country where time has stood still. Once a great maritime nation, its power declined with modern routes and ships. The country sank into poverty, its ruler retreated into isolation. As a result, one of the most strategically located countries is just now emerging from life as it was lived centuries ago. Oman is closed to outsiders, no tourists are allowed. But we have taken our cameras there for a rare look inside Oman today and an idea of what the rest of the Gulf was like before oil wealth came tumbling in. The people below this helicopter are living in cliffs, in caves, above the Straits of Hormuz, the passageway for much of the world's oil. Most are members of the Shihu tribe. The Gulf for centuries has been made up of tribes. Oman is a country where over 200 of them still exist. The Shihus in the north are one of the most famous, with a war call that has descended through centuries of tribal warfare. In this country of approximately 1 million people, the tribe remains the center of society, and the family remains the center of the tribe. Women usually marry within the tribe, and in contrast to the West, the preferred marriage partner is a relative, a first cousin. Omanis have a saying that to marry a strange woman is like drinking from a strange jar. Most of these women will live their lives within the family and the villages in which they were born. The country is a mix of these small villages and of Bedouins scattered throughout the hills, following their herds of camel. They move from place to place in search of grazing, and many return to the villages only to trade their camel products for supplies. The villages are in turn run, as they have been for centuries, by a headman called a wali. This man is the wali of Rekut village in the south.
Wali's office more job for all people in this area.
Electricity and modern civilization are only just beginning to touch the country. Until 1970, the city of Muscat was walled in and the gates locked 3 hours after sunset. People walking at night had to carry a lantern. The ruler, Saeed bin Tamer, the current sultan's father, felt the modern world would corrupt Oman and simply blocked it out.
Domestic affairs was miserable at that time. So we tried to change.
Yusuf al-Alaway grew up in the Dhofar Hills in the south of Oman. He is now the foreign minister.
At the time, if you want to buy a bicycle, you have to get special permit. Of course, cars is not allowed. There is no radios, broadcasting, no TVs, no roads, nothing at all. The only things exist in those days is the human being living on this ground, on this land, as the people were in 16th century or Middle Ages.
We have a proverb that says, time passes, but it does not die. It weakens. Oman weakened over the last 200 years. When anyone talks about the history of Oman, it is difficult for him to believe it is true. Oman was a closed society. It was isolated from the rest of the world. It was incarcerated.
The Al-Harthis became part of the movement to overthrow Saeed bin Tamer. The rebellion began here in the southern province of Oman, down in the Dhofar Hills. The mountain tribes, who heard of the modernization taking place in the rest of the Gulf, grew frustrated as they experienced poverty so severe they frequently were malnourished and lived, as one tribesman put it, quote, like animals. They decided that the time had come to overthrow the old sultan. They needed arms and money. Support was offered by the communists next door in South Yemen. The people of Dhofar and the communists fought side by side for a few years until the communists overplayed their hand. Yusuf al-Alaway was one of the rebels who fought with them but became disaffected.
As soon as they enter the movement, they try to control it and to change the whole structure of philosophy of the revolution. So they have launched in a campaign to assassinate and murder anyone who is supposed to be a nationalist. In every single family, there is one man or a daughter being missed or killed by the communists.
We are Muslim people and we don't like the communists. They try to stop our people from praying. They try to change the way we live.
The turning point came when the old sultan's son decided to depose his father. The old sultan had locked him under house arrest because of his educated, progressive ideas. He emerged from 7 years of incarceration to take over a country that went wild with celebration. He issued a call to the rebels to lay down their arms and to join him to oust the communists and regain control of the country.
Last 75 years, Army of Oman clear all communists from this area to Yemen South. Now all this area very peace, no any problem, and all people very happy with government.
Fighting was raging everywhere in this mountain. This house was hit by 37 shells. Now that Qaboos has come, thank God, there is decent living and no more war. Now there is water, cars, airplanes, hospitals, everything is available. We thank God.
Qaboos then started to lay plans for pulling his entire country, formed of isolated pockets, into this century. Changes have begun, But there are so many years to overcome in this country where the clock stopped long ago that much of it remains a relic from an era that has vanished from the rest of the world. A living history book of the societies that were the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, before the petrodollar changes came. Oman's coast stretches along the sea, and the fishing villages that stand upon it, villages that have spawned such legendary characters as Sinbad the Sailor in the Tales of Arabian Nights, have changed very little today. People live primarily off of the fishing catch. Money is not a great deal more abundant than it was in times past, since Oman was the last of the Gulf states to find oil, and per capita has the least of it. Walled castles and cities built around enormous forts dot the interior. They grew up during times past when tribes staked out areas of the country and fought so constantly that the ruler of this castle in 1550, Suleiman, wrote that one night alone in his room he heard a voice which said, "Enjoy yourself, son of Al-Nahab, a few days more. Your rule will soon be over, so prepare for death." He did, and it came. The fighting has stopped, but the dates and fish that they lived from and traded still remain the staple, much as they did when the ill-fated son of Al-Nahab met his end. Throughout the years of poverty, many say that the Omanis were able to exist only because Oman's interior was blessed with dates and vegetables, along with the fish on the coast. Sultan Qaboos's castle is at the center of the main city, Muscat, the capital of the country. Muscat in times past was one of the most famous ports of the Gulf, the center of trade for silks from China, spices from Malabar, and slaves from Africa. The small merchants survived through the years of isolation after Oman sealed itself from the outside world, and it is here in Muscat that the old and the new of Oman are starting to merge, where the 20th century is starting to penetrate the closed doors of this country. People are now coming in from the remote villages to Muscat and seeing modern civilization for the first time: cars, electricity, and other consumer goods. Our helicopter pilot said that people now ask to be brought down from their cliffs and that many villages are disappearing, dying, as the people choose not to return. I am, he laughed, the new donkey. I am also watching a way of life die. The quality of life for most is just beginning to change. Blindness from trachoma and other easily treatable diseases was widespread. At one time, there was only one missionary hospital of 12 beds for the entire country. Infant mortality was extremely high. Now the country has begun to build hospitals, such as Hula Hospital in Muscat, where people for the first time are receiving the kind of medical treatment that has been available to most of the world for decades. Hula Hospital is run by an American surgeon who came to Oman as a medical missionary years ago, Dr. Donald Bosch.
When we first arrived here in Oman, there was no public electricity. So that meant that we had to function without electricity. We had a little generator of our own, which was capable of turning the fans and lighting some lights, but not strong enough to run any air conditioning. In the operating room, when I was doing surgery, I had to have one assistant who stood right behind me, and his job was to keep me from dripping sweat into the wound. And that's all he did. He just stood there. And the whole time I'd be operating, he was standing there mopping my brow and wiping off the end of my nose and so forth to be sure that my sweat did not drip into the patient's wound.
Now you're saving far more people than...
Oh, my, yes. The difference in the mortality rate, infant mortality rate, and the difference in the maternal mortality rate, everything in the country, health-wise, is improving very, very rapidly.
Helicopters are now used to reach the remote villages, It is still the only way into some of these locations to bring in medication and doctors, or to carry the seriously ill to the main hospital. Schools were also non-existent in Oman. Some families smuggled their children out of the country to be educated, then found they were forbidden to return by the old sultan, who feared they would contaminate the others. How about your education? Where did you get your education?
I'm sorry to say nowhere. I haven't been to any schools. In our days, we didn't have schools in Oman excepting 2 primary schools. But in my early days, there was only one. In fact, our parents didn't send us abroad for education.
Schools are now going up all over Oman. Elementary schools and high schools, from which the students will be sent off to universities abroad, since there are no universities yet in Oman. Education, once considered improper for girls, is now available. And new homes are being built around Muscat because of government grants, oil money, and merchants who are starting to do well again. What all of this is going to do to the traditions of the old Oman is something that many wonder and worry about.
I think it's inevitable that a lot of this will be lost. There are some things that will not be lost. The Omani people are an extremely hospitable type of person. If you were to go, for example, in the inland today and stop at a village, they would immediately invite you in. They would go out and slaughter a goat and make a big dinner for you without having any idea who you are.
Today, however, the foreigner presents something of a problem. He's treated with great courtesy, but kept at a distance. Much of the development has required foreign workers, primarily Asian, to handle construction and engineering jobs. The British, long a presence in the Gulf as political advisors and merchants, predominate in white-collar occupations and the military, where they serve in command and training posts. That the Omanis have mixed feelings about having any foreigners around is evident. The laws put them in a different category, and so do the people. The foreign worker is tolerated, but isolated. British officers find themselves by themselves sand yachting on weekends, while this group of Brits formed a theater group to pass the time.
Tell him a nut! Everybody had
I didn't know we were looking for a nut.
Aren't we?
No, a screw. That's what I'm after, a screw.
It's quite difficult for us to mix with the Omanis, in fact, in general, though we do have Omani friends.
If you do have a mixed party, I mean, everybody tries to get on with everybody else, but they're distinctly uncomfortable. The guys will turn up to parties, I think, but because of their culture and their lifestyle, they don't bring their wives, or if they do, they're sat in a row along the corner. It's very difficult to really mix with them, you know?
They are changing a lot now. The ladies, you'll find, underneath their great black gowns, are normally dressed in Dior fashions and exquisite jewellery, and they really do go to town. And I've been to quite a lot of Omani parties here, and when the ladies arrive and they cast off their black cloaks, and they're absolutely exquisite. They're beautifully dressed and up to the minute, perfect makeup and everything, but there's never a man in sight. There's just women everywhere, and they're all beautiful. They dress for each other, whereas we tend to dress perhaps more for the men as well as for the women. They dress only for the women, and they dress exquisitely. And they love it. There are girls here in rah-rah dresses at the moment, but you won't see them. You'll never see them. But if you go to one of the ladies' parties, but it's all very much their own thing. And it's great. They are super, and they love it.
But those are the sort of wealthy wives who live in the capital area. If you go out into the interior and see the way the women live in villages, it's an eye-opener, really. And I do sometimes wonder as we drive by in our Land Cruiser or whatever, what they do think of us. But they really must think we're pretty odd, I should think.
We're the animals. We're the animals in the zoo, really. And yet, they always seem to me that they wouldn't change. They're interested, they like to look at it, but they wouldn't. They don't want it for themselves.
If the Omanis are reticent, their neighbors are not. To simply cross the border between Oman and the United Arab Emirates is to walk into a time machine fueled by 2 decades of petrodollars. one that created cities and countries and propelled a poor population almost overnight into a jet-set, wealth-studded world that has left them and the rest of the world reeling. Absolutely none of this was here 20 years ago. Not the houses, not the office buildings, not the streets, not even the trees. All that existed was one sheikh's clay palace and some houses of straw and of coral. Even the country itself didn't officially exist as late as 1970. What did exist was the Gulf and an incredible store of oil. And what has happened here in Abu Dhabi and in the United Arab Emirates is a tale that unfolds like one of the stories from 1001 Nights. Ambassador Edward Henderson first came to Abu Dhabi in 1948 as an oil man.
Faster. The speed of advance in all the lower Gulf states, particularly Qatar, UAE, Abu Dhabi itself, has been amazing. I think it's probably unequaled anywhere in the world. To go from such total lack of all the amenities of life to total amenity in a matter of 15 years, 20 years in some cases, is near incredible. I can hardly believe it when I'm down there. And people say, has the place changed? I said, no, it's a different place almost.
As the oil money flooded in, the previously poor 7 sheikhs of the area decided to bury old rivalries and form a federation. For years, they had battled amongst themselves over territory, but the new oil wealth forced a new order. The 2 sheikhs with the most oil became president and vice president, and the rest hoped to benefit from an overflow of their funds. The United Arab Emirates was born in 1971. The greatest amount of oil money was in Abu Dhabi. Sheikh Zayed, the ruler of Abu Dhabi, became president of the federation and began the job of not only forming a country, but presenting it as a reality to the rest of the world. Michael Sterner was sent as the first U.S. ambassador to the new country.
In 1974, I went out there. I remember arriving with a great many ideas about how we could promote bilateral relations, and at one point I outlined this to one of Sheikh Zayed's close advisors. This was perhaps in the first couple of months I was out there. He found that all of this bilateral stuff overloaded the circuit quite a bit, and he said to me, sort of pulled me aside, and he said, Ambassador, I have to tell you, the main reason Sheikh Zayed wants an American ambassador here is to prove to his own people and to his fellow rulers that the United Arab Emirates is here to stay, and that Washington recognizes that fact.
As the oil flows and camels have gone from being survival to sport, the oil money which formed the country remains the glue that keeps it together. Sheikh Zayed of Abu Dhabi has quelled some old rivalries by pledging half of his oil income to leaders of the other Emirates, some significantly poorer. And the average citizen of Abu Dhabi now finds himself on any given day at the races enjoying one of the highest per capita incomes the world is presently offering. $28,000 for every little Abu Dhabi baby with the good fortune to land on that patch of earth this year. The list of benefits cushioning every bet beneath this tent is truly staggering. What basic benefits, specifically when it comes to housing, medicine, education, are you now able to give your citizens?
نعطي البيوت للمواطنين يعني من دون مقابل أي شيء.
We have, in fact, put the foundation for a welfare society in our country so that the citizens can have the housing without paying for them. There are houses which are provided by the government. The education is free and it is obligatory to all ages, including the higher education. Health is also free. The medical services are free. Those who have no employment or those who have suffering social disabilities are given allowances by the government and they are on welfare. All of these measures have been taken by the government in order to maintain the security, stability in the country and to raise the standards of living of our people.
After that answer, most Americans would move here. Right? As the money hit the pocket of the average citizen, luxury yachts replaced old dhows, and leisure hours found kids of parents who never had electricity pulling up their thobes for a game of bowling. The government's policy of giving everybody the money to build a house has made Abu Dhabi an architect's fantasy of suburban homes with camels parked outside and pastel palaces and neighborhoods that go on for miles, interspersed at every few blocks with gold-washed mosques, for a society submerged beneath goods and services for which to send up their thanks to Allah as they enjoy life in one of the most expensive cities in the world. Neighboring Dubai, the second richest sheikhdom in the Federation, has also emerged as one of today's wealthier cities. Its banks and trade have earned it the reputation of the Singapore of the Gulf, while the water taxis which ply the canals in the middle of this rich and pleasure-seeking city have also earned it the title of the Venice of the Gulf. Together with Abu Dhabi, Dubai has pledged half of its oil income to aid the other sheikdoms, and these two powers within the Federation have managed to work well together despite past differences. Rashid, Dubai's ruler, in fact built Dubai into a successful port even before oil money. Dubai for years had famous merchant families that grew wealthy from trade with Iran and its other Gulf neighbors. But it was in fact Rashid, a shrewd businessman, who brought in new trade and allowed some old items of business to flourish, the legal market and the not-so-legal market. Dubai is one of the most famous gold markets in the Middle East, and gold smuggling, re-exporting gold to India where it is contraband, but nonetheless in huge demand for dowries, was one of the main sources of income, and, in fact, still is. The trade has reached such proportions that on occasion some of Dubai's leading citizens have been publicly banned from India.
The gold smuggling really was legal. Well, it really was in those days.
I remember my husband was at the airport. He was in charge of the Dubai airport. And you find it so much of the gold bars lying on the ground. And there was no watchman, nothing.
The gold smuggling trade continues to bring in millions, albeit less openly than oil. And the longer I talked to these two old sea captains, the less I found out. In days gone by, this was a very famous area for the gold smugglers. How did they carry on their business here?
محمد يسألونك إذا عندك أي فكرة عن تهريب الذهب في القديم. تقدر تعطيهم أي فكرة عن تهريب الذهب في القديم؟ هذا والله ما نعرف. Muhammad says he doesn't know anything about the smuggler because the most of the captains, local captains, what he says, they work only the commercial and the pirates line, not in the gold smuggler.
Other parts of the country, such as Fujairah, with its wild and rocky coast, are clearly in need still of their neighbors' largesse. Fujairah remains poor compared to Abu Dhabi or Dubai. They have little oil and have lived for decades here in crumbling huts cut off from the outside world, until the wealthier Emirates started channeling some of their oil money here for new housing and some health and education facilities. Since they don't have oil, they've decided to promote tourism and have begun to turn the ancient rocks and coasts of Fujairah into the latest tourist spot catering to Europeans. Beyond that, they've advertised themselves as the place for tankers to idle before they enter the Gulf, where their daily insurance costs triple. So far, the Federation has survived. Let me ask you, at the time that the Federation was put together, did you think that it would succeed?
Yes, I think, we feel that it would succeed because there was no alternative. I mean, people realize that their destiny and their future lies really in a strong and federation and very active one, not only internally, but also on the regional level.
Even though the Union has survived, many wonder whether the society will. Because if oil has brought about profound economic and political changes, they can't compare to the changes wrought in the society itself, where people have emerged from a tribal, non-industrialized society to 20th century modernism in less than 2 decades.
15 or 10 years ago, the Emirates could be considered as a small village scattered on desert. Now, with the oil income, the impact was so great. We had a lot of change, socially, economically, politically. And I would consider the most important change is the social.
There is a gap between the fathers and the sons. There's no doubt about it. If we take the fathers, let us say, of the present group of students we have at the university, most of them, if not all of them, have barely gone through elementary school. In fact, some of them have not gone through school at all. So there is an educational gap. They see things in a different way. For example, the primary loyalty of the younger generation is to the country. The older generation, their parents and grandparents, especially grandparents, no, loyalty is to the tribe, to the clan, to the family. In the case of the sons, the order is completely different. So there is this gap, but it has not really resulted in widespread conflict between the generations. I think the two generations realize the need for each other.
Captain Ali is definitely a member of the new generation. His parents came from the desert and rode camels. He is now a pilot in the United Arab Emirates Air Force.
My parents got the opportunity to migrate the desert and come to this civil life.
Did you have any difficulty making that kind of transition?
You mean a transition from a Bedouin life to a civil aviation? I mean, well, it's not difficult. When the person wants to try something, he has to try it. We're born in the desert, yes, but we were brought up on a civil life, and so I don't find it difficult at all. At all, it's so simple. And I enjoy when I go to the desert, and I enjoy when I go to Hawaii. Dubai Union 39, zone out. People from town, you know, they're always thinking of the desert, especially if you go picnic anywhere, you'll love it, you know. Think of weekend when you go out and you stay there whole weekend. When you come back home, you say, oh God, I wish the weekend is extended more.
While Captain Ali flies airplanes, his brother Nasser prefers life in the desert.
شو اسمها؟ يقولون طاحن حبر من ايام بس ما ادري ايش سويت الحين؟ منو؟ سويت لما طلع؟ الحين اسوي له ملح، جمد له ملح Long time ago, people care very much for camels because you get out of the camel many things: milk, traveling over, across the desert, carrying your goods, shifting your houses from here to there. So the camel is doing everything for you. They miss the camel if they don't see him. When they have a baby camel, the mother and father, they call him as my boy or my daughter. They love him. They love him how they brought him up. You know, when they bring him up, it's like one of their kids. And you never leave it alone. And you always take care of it. Now everything is changed. You have four-wheel drive, have money, got their own new life. Some of them, they don't forget about the camel. They keep the camel in their gardens or their area, and they feed the camel. They look after it. Because they remember when they have nothing to eat, the camel used to do everything for them. So the life has changed. Camel is still friend. Most of people who lived on the desert, they still love to be on the desert more than to be on a city life because they feel more freedom, you know, no telephone bell is ringing every 5 minutes, you know, postman is knocking their doors, electric bill or water bill, they never come across these circumstances. So whatever they can live in town, they still don't like it. They love to be in the desert. They love to see the dark. They love to see the sun in the early morning. So that's the best thing in their life.
If Captain Ali leads a life that his father could scarcely have imagined, the changes that the new wealth in the Gulf have meant for women are even more staggering. What is your outfit?
Well, Joe, this first layer is an aba. This particular thing is a makna. And this is a batula.
Do you ever wear anything like that?
No, I don't. Sometimes at weddings, I'll wear the aba, simply because it is a very feminine outfit. All the other girls and women in the society here in Dubai do wear it. but it's not quite practical for the kind of work I do here, so...
This woman is a TV newscaster in Dubai. Her mother still wears the veil. She and her friends describe their lives.
To be frank, you know, we are not from here, so, but we used to go out, but still we cannot go out for shopping as free like today. And just we have to order, tell our husbands to bring the things.
Once we were invited to a bank manager, so naturally we had to go lunchtime, say after 1 o'clock. And the only way of crossing the creek in the olden days was by boat. So we got into the Land Rover. There were no cars in those days. So we got into that Land Rover and stopped at the boat stand. And the moment my husband came, in the meantime, there was a gentleman, and he was looking at me all the time, which I didn't like. And he couldn't help, he came close to me and touched me on my bare back. I got a fright of my life. My husband said, don't worry, because I was simply furious. He said, you don't have to worry, because they're not used to seeing anything like that. So I had to pass the incident just as an ordinary thing. But you know, it was very difficult in those days to go out during the daytime, because nobody was used to going out like that.
I myself feel uneasy, you see, to move about without an abba in this part of the world. That's all. Otherwise, there are so many who don't even wear this. My daughters do not wear. We are not strict with them.
A man can have 4 wives. They may come from the same country, or they could come from different countries. And the only rule they have to observe is that they all should be given equal rights. Like supposing he wants to build a house for the first one, second one will also get one like that. If he marries again, third one, she'll have the same rights, and the same for the fourth.
How common is that today now?
This is not very common anymore.
But why do they not do it anymore?
I think the educated races, they wouldn't tolerate. Like the girls wouldn't tolerate the husband to marry again, because she wants to be one man's woman. I mean, as it would be anywhere else. So it's improved that way, I must say that. And there is a lot of contentment with the younger generation because of more security.
The good of the civil, you know, the Western civilization on us is to be limited with one wife. It's not just also the Western civilization, also the way of the life we are living. Similar to the Western life, okay? Whereas the income is less than before. Where you are worried how to support this woman. You can't support the other one. And really it's bad, you know? Living in 2 society, 2 houses. I don't know how they manage it, but it takes a lot of energy, you know, how to deal between 2 houses.
It was all arranged marriages, without the boy ever meeting the girl or the girl seeing the husband.
How would they arrange them, and did they usually work out?
The parents. You see, the mother used to go and meet the girl's mother and see the girl, of course. And then she used to go and arrange it with her own family. And they used to easily have nice marriages, usually.
Was unlike what people might think. I think it was easier for them to accept the new partner simply because they did not know other men. They did not date other men. Okay, the Western women date and they go out and they think it's better to know more people, and this gives them a chance to choose a better partner. But there's another side to this argument. This might make them not able really to appreciate the person they've got.
Is virginity still an important thing?
Definitely, it has always been very important. This is the basic concept behind honor. What is the meaning of honor for an Arab? An honor is to protect the females and to make sure that their name is not tainted by anything. I mean, less things would taint the woman's image, and I can't imagine that this issue will be not important even for ages to come.
And now for the women movement in our country, it's going slowly. To me, it's not enough. But if I will see, to look at it, you know, comparing with the other society around us, they are doing fairly well.
عليها
Women are starting to enter the job market in many categories, although there remains some concern about social acceptability, such as in Abu Dhabi, where girls still shy away from appearing on TV for fear they won't then be marriageable.
We have a problem in that because, you know, we still, the girl is not allowed to show, you know. And I don't know, maybe if the girl been shown on TV, that's mean nobody going to marry her or she will be something different, you know. And I find it like all the jobs, it's really, I like it. I really like my job. It's nothing with that, you know. Oh, we said, God give you, or since you born, okay, there is a man will come to you if you're on the TV or not.
Perhaps one of the most dramatic changes up and down the Gulf is the new generation of young women working as doctors, nurses, businesswomen, secretaries, and bankers.
When I wanted to work, I approached the fund and I was accepted without any hesitation.
Are there any problems that come up around women working? In other words, are there drawbacks to it?
As far as I'm concerned, I didn't see any. I haven't faced any problems so far. I've almost been 3 years in the fund. I've always been treated very well and encouraged.
Are there any negatives to it? Does the family suffer as a result of women working?
No, I don't think so. It depends. If you can distribute your time, you know, fairly well between your family and your job, I don't think the family suffers. I mean, in the West, you have women working from the morning all day, and you still find them managing their families. So I don't see why we should not be able to do that, because we only work 6 hours a day.
Just one last question. It would seem to me that you're living your life very differently than your mother, than your grandmother. Is there difficulty in one generation understanding the other?
Yes.
How do you see that? Well, how does that evidence itself?
Like when you first announce that you're going to go and work in an institution like this, it's, you know, they do get shocked. But very slowly they start accepting it, and they finally do accept it. They think the first thing that, oh, you're going to go and work in a place where it's all men, and you know it's not good for you. But once they see that you are doing well and you're being respected by everybody around, they seem to like it. You know, they accept it finally.
We were talking to a gentleman the other day who said that there's a lot of women who don't work, who have nannies to take care of the baby and people to clean up the house. He said, I don't know what they do. What do they do?
Well, some of them, they go to school because, you know, they haven't been educated before. But some of them just stay at home. I don't know what they do. You know, they don't really produce very much, but that's the way they're used to.
Is it just kind of a wasted life in many ways?
Well, I think so, yeah. I mean, they just visit one another and just, I don't know, because, I mean, they don't do any housework, they don't do the cooking, they don't take care of the kids. I don't know what they do, which I think is a waste. I mean, surely they could contribute to the society by doing something.
The majority of men don't seem to worry so much about whether women work or not.
These young men, at least the educated young men, would not mind at all if their wife went to work. Of course, they might restrict her, let's say, to teaching, to becoming a TV announcer or a radio announcer, or doing some other kind of work where her contacts with men are not very extensive. But I believe this is a very important step forward. At least they recognize the right of the woman now to go out and work.
What they do seem to worry about is what is happening to the whole society, the entire family structure beneath the onslaught of wealth, modernization, and the foreign workers who have come to their shores with it.
There is women who do the work. Some of them, they don't. They just sit and take care of the children, and as a matter of fact, they even given up that habit of taking care of the children or preparing the food by hiring babysitters from Asia, for example, from India, from Philippines, to come and take care of their children. And personally, I think that is a big mistake, and I think it's very important if the man goes for work and leaves behind him his children, thinking of the mother as taking responsibility of raising them and then leaving them to somebody else. Well, the children will have a different habit, will have a different mentality, it's complete different member of the society. And I think that is a very, very dangerous.
I'm not talking about the foreigners. I'm talking about the local family. I'm talking about this family, which came 150 years, okay? Let us to see the change, you know. They used to live in a tent, okay? The whole day, the husband does not have anything to do except to do some selling and buying small things. And when he will come back, he does not have anything in his mind. Where now he is 24 hours aware of the business and a lot of things, I mean, how to deal with this and that, and this cause for him to ignore his family, where he is, most of his time is busy with his business, busy how to get rich, busy how to get the cash, worry about his business, you know, and ignoring his family. This has caused so many social problems for the family, for the husband, for the wife, and for the children. For the children, whereas nobody is taking care of them, and for the wife, whereas she lost the love. She cannot feel the love from her husband.
They have to get used to talk to their father on the telephone. I spend 20% of my time in Abu Dhabi, and the rest 80% traveling abroad. So this is one of the main problems of the modern life. The family socially has changed a lot, really, and now the life as a whole became more in favor of the material rather than in favor of the social. And the social relation is getting weaker, and the family is becoming smaller. For example, myself, I don't have much time to spend with my family, with my children. So the wife has to behave as a father and a mother, to look after the children, their school, their studies.
Do you find that it's impacted on the extended family as well?
Well, for sure. I mean, in the old days, we used to have much bigger families and more children. Now we have smaller families and less children because the parents, they concentrate on the quality rather than on the quantity.
Foreign workers are a major concern. They have poured into the Gulf to take on the jobs that oil wealth and construction booms have created. They stream into the airports, coming from India, Pakistan, Africa, and Asia, where jobs are scarce and the pay is poor. They remain as outsiders in the society, an unwelcome necessity from which to purchase goods and services. And they are now presenting these countries with a serious problem. They have become so numerous that they now outnumber the residents.
We are becoming minorities, and it is true if I will say we are just around 15% as locals or the citizens or the originals, living among 85% whom they are foreigners coming from, I mean, neighbor countries. And there is many cultural things been changing because this migration waves. Many of it is for the good, but where we are talking about is the bad things, the bad impact on our culture and our society. The language. It's hardly to see somebody is using Arabic language here. You will find now the kid who is 6 years old, he speaks very well Indian, but he does not speak Arabic. And you can't get in any position in banks or any department if you don't know English or any foreign language. Also affecting our causes where we are trying to Arabize things. We can't because there's a huge number of foreigners. They don't know Arabic. It's also affecting social life, such as health, where there's people brought to us many diseases, I will say, for example, or sickness, which we don't know about it, and we do, as we are from the desert, we never heard about it.
These foreign workers have brought a whole array of social problems with them. Many feel that one of the most serious is the increase in crime these countries are now experiencing.
The crime rate has been an uptrend, and not long ago, this country was so much peaceful. The people knows each other, and there was no crime rate. I mean, the crime rate is almost zero. I mean, that is striking. But a few years ago, we started our development. We're starting some industrial projects, which we need expatriate people, worker, engineers. Of course, I'm not speaking of engineers in particular, but hard worker. The crime rate has been in an uptrend, and I think that is one of the alarming things about the social problem which we are encountering now, and I think it is very dangerous. And most of the crimes are coming from Asian. I'm not trying to be discriminative here I'm not against, I'm Asian by myself. But the 75% of the crimes is from the Asian, simply from Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, which we are facing now. And I think this is one of the problems.
The problem remains, however, because at present, these countries can't get along without the foreign workers. A recent study showed that unless this rate of immigration is markedly slowed or stopped, in less than 20 years, the foreigners will make up over 95% of the population.
Well, if a Bedouin likes the desert and he lives in the desert, he doesn't like to change, you know, and he would not come to the city to put his son and daughters in school. He would not come to do hard work here. He likes it with his camel, with his food there. He can live peacefully without any sort of a strange life or a new life. He's resisting the change. So the government did so much by taking the schools to his place and taking the hospital to his place, and also putting him on payroll from the social affairs department or ministry. They pay him money. They also give him incentive, as a matter of fact, for the number of cattle and the number of camels he has, the number of sheep and so on he keeps. They pay him certain amount of money to maintain his lifestyle.
What would you say are the greatest fears that the young men have here now?
Well, it's very difficult to answer, really. But I believe some of the studies we've made showed that there is a sort of a rather vague fear of the unknown, a vague fear of the future. It's not verbalized in any way. It hasn't taken any definite shape, but it's lingering somewhere underneath. And I think, is related to the changes that are taking place in society, in which a new structure of interpersonal relations is developing. And until this thing gets shaped up, and until they recognize or find the new, accept the new forms this structure is taking, this fear will remain. But it's in a sense the fear of being removed away from one's sources of security, from one's old community. And until he finds this new community, or until the new community sort of takes shape, there is going to be this kind of a fear.
I consider the oil, it didn't come for the good of us. It's really, I'm sorry to say it, it's to harm us. I wish we didn't have the oil, that we can build our country slowly, slowly, but not to have all of these boomings, you know, where in very fast, in a very small period of time, everything has been changing, where the people psychologically cannot have it in their mentality, see? Then the people, for example, they don't have any plan for the future, and that's the most dangerous thing.
If you could poll most people to turn the clock backwards before oil to a more peaceful time, would they do it? Would they want that?
I think some people will prefer to go back, and I think, you know, to go back with their traditions and old society, and I think their thinking is just justified, you know. They will get away from the crime here, and they will get away from the sophistication, and but I think there is a lot of people also, on the other hand, will resist such an idea simply because the country needs development, people needs education. The world is so interconnected, they cannot be isolated, they cannot just go back, you know. I think we are so much in need of the outside world as much as the outside world is in need for us.
There is no turning the clock back, and many wonder what the future holds, whether this vast oil machine and the wealth that it has generated will last, or whether it will turn from being their blessing to their demise. Join us next week as we take you inside the petrodollar coast world of oil markets, high finance, and politics for a look at what they have and what they're doing with it, and for a look at why these El Dorado countries, currently afloat on a sea of oil, worry that their world in the Gulf may become a sea of conflict.
This program is a production of Pacific Productions and the Pacific Mountain Network, which are solely responsible for its content.
These video cassettes are a gift from the Garrett Corporation.
This program has been made possible by grants from Chemical Bank, Fluor, a worldwide engineering, construction, and natural resource corporation, and by the Ford Motor Company, where quality is job one.